As you know, there was a tremendous fallout from the New York Post cartoon, namely the cartoon showing a bullet-riddled chimpanzee with 2 bullet holes in it, saying that, quote, they'll have to find someone else to write the next stimulus bill. Many people outraged, saying that it was a direct reference to President Barack Obama. Here in New York, we had massive protests outside the New York Post magazine, newspaper, I should say, which actually ran the article. Rupert Murdoch, of course, giving a quote a little bit later on, coming out and making it an apology. But what does it all mean, and what is it race revisited again? Well, Dr. Gloria Browne-Marshall is our guest in studio, and she's here to share a little bit with us. As you see the cartoon right there front and center, Dr. Gloria Browne-Marshall. She's also the executive director of the Law and Policy Group, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad to have you back here once again. And as we talk a little bit about this, you know, so many people are outraged, and some people say we're making too much of this. Your thoughts?
My thought is that it is what it is. When you say so many people are outraged, it wasn't just an outrage coming from the black community. Latinos were outraged. There were white people who were outraged as well as other people of color. I mean, it was what it was, and that was a symbol of racism and anger and rage. And it wasn't just published in the New York Post. It was published across the page from the image of President Obama signing the stimulus bill. People don't even make that reference. When they're saying, you know, the New York Post response, well, sometimes a cartoon is just a cartoon, and maybe sometimes it is. But in this particular instance, this political cartoon was meant to be something to show outrage at having a black president, and I think also outrage at his intelligence. Because this is what they did to both Michelle and Barack Obama during the campaign.
In the New Yorker magazine.
In the New Yorker magazine. It's the same thing. Calling, you know, her baby's daddy. You know, or she's his baby's mama, you know, and I was like, here these people are, very well educated, Ivy League educated, they got married before they had children, they live a Christian life, and still they find ways to demean them, and this is just another way to demean black people and the success of black people, and basically saying, I don't care if you're President of the United States, I'm still going to denigrate you, and think they can do it without consequence.
Talk to us a little bit about America. What do you think America's perception of this article really is?
From the people I've talked to in my circle, they were outraged from the very beginning. I think this also tells certain people who thought just the election of a black president was enough to make America post-race. I've been doing a lot of public speaking around the country, and people ask me to come in and speak and talk about America being post-race, and then they add a question mark just to kind of hedge their bet. And then this happened on the very day I gave a presentation on the question of whether or not America is post-race. There are people who, based on my book, Race, Law, and American Society, are focused and invested in a socio-racial hierarchy. And this racial hierarchy has certain people at the top, the middle, and the bottom, based on what history has done. And law, in particular, maintaining a socio-racial hierarchy. And there are people who think they have a vested interest in the top, and they see a black face at the top, and they're wondering, then who am I? What is my identity? What one person, an older woman said to me, older black woman said to me in upstate New York, she said, this shows rage. This shows rage, especially coming, think about this, the 10th anniversary or commemoration of the shooting of Amadou Diallo by police. And now we have the police in this, obviously, are the ones shooting the chimpanzee. And we know that's what happened, you know, in real life with the incident with the chimpanzee. But the other part about it is the police should be outraged that they would be used in this way to depict them doing something.
That was one of the things that a lot of people were saying, is that the police department wasn't even so outspoken on the matter. To hear them really take a back seat to all of this.
Yes. And any other time, if you reversed it and you had someone else doing something like this to a police officer, even when they had...
Oh, the PBA would be out.
Oh, yeah, they would be out. They would be outraged. And they would understand another person's or another group's outrage. If you change this around, change the wording around to refer to any other group, that group would have reason to be outraged. What I think this makes me realize more than anything else, not so much that we're not post-race, because I don't believe we are post-race, but also what some people have in their minds and their hearts come to accept, and that is their position in this world. And they want other people to know, no matter how far you go, no matter how much education you have, we're not going to accept you as equals.
Let's talk about this. You have a book called Race, Law, and American Society. That's out. Let's talk a little bit about post-race, because that's the big discussion right now. For those people who don't exactly know what post-race is, let's fill them in real quick.
Okay, post-race is this idea that based on probably Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, that people would be judged by the content of their character as opposed to their race. And so this whole idea of Barack Obama becoming president is one in which the country then says, and when I say the country, I'm looking more from the perspective of white America, then have we gone past this idea that we're judging people by their race or skin color because white people voted for Barack Obama? There's no way he could be president just on the black vote alone. Mm-hmm. And we know there were many people, 55% of America voted for him, of the electorate voted for him. And so then the question becomes, if you voted for Barack Obama, does it mean you no longer care about race? Or some people said, were you just so desperate you knew what the alternative would be? Right. You know, if you didn't have a man
which one do you think it really is? Or does it fall really
I think it
middle?
Falls a little in the middle. I think it was that he was so smart, mm-hmm. that he ran such a wonderfully professional campaign above board, that he did so much more than John McCain to get these votes, that people said, if we weren't in such dire straits and he wasn't so smart, and if all those things didn't come together and it's 2009 and all that, then no, we wouldn't probably have voted for him. But given all the other circumstances, they were like, okay, yeah, we're going to give him a chance. But I think in less than 30 days, this came out within the 30-day period of his being in office. And you wonder, you know, the backlash, because there's always been this backlash in America. How could we be post-race? How could we get to a point where we're only judging people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin?
But then somebody would probably say, Dr. Marshall, we are post-race because you have an African-American president.
And I would say, especially to white men at this point, some of whom voted for him and support him, others are confused. They're like, you know, where's the America I thought of as a child that was supposed to be my investment? It was supposed to be their heritage. And there's a lot of confusion around the issue of race, and that's why we need to talk about it. Because they might say, well, I voted for him. Isn't that enough to prove that I don't judge on race anymore? It's like, yes, but it's just like the question Sonia Sanchez raised one time when I took her class. And she said, everybody's saying I would live next to Bill Cosby. And the question should be, would Bill Cosby live next to you? Mm. Because if you think about it, why must a person be a genius almost, a multimillionaire? Why do they have to be so exceptional to be accepted? Mm. You're not exceptional. It's like, right. Why must the black person or the person of color be exceptional? That in itself is a question. That speaks to the issue of post-race in my mind. Anyway.
Let's talk about Eric Holder for a minute, Attorney General. We know that he called the United States a nation of cowards. Some people very outraged by the fact that the Attorney General would be so outspoken. Some people say that maybe he used the wrong choice of words. Other people say he's dead on point. Your perspective?
My perspective is we come to a place in history and we meet at this crossroad, and we've done it so many times, and we lack the political will to actually go to the next level. But on the other hand, I don't want to just, you know, crucify the United States of America, because I think there are very good things. The fact that you had these two men on a platform on January 20th, and this country made me so proud, because it actually was this smooth transition of power that you don't see in so many countries with far less resources. So the fact that we would hand over political clout when the person, commander-in-chief, could have said, no, I'm not giving it up to anybody else. I'm the only person who can run, or I can't give it to an African-American. We did that. I was in England and France, and they said at the time that Barack Obama was made president of the United States, they would never have a prime minister who was African. Never, ever, would never happen. They actually said this, and they were, you know, quoted in news saying this. But I also had blacks in those countries ask me, how can we have a Barack Obama? And I said, well, it's very simple. If you have a filing fee and an application, turn in the money and turn in the application and see what happens. And many of them just couldn't fathom doing that. So we live in a country with a lot of bold black people who are willing to take advantage of the opportunities that are here. And despite the many obstacles I talk about in my book that we've had to overcome in education and voting rights, in property and employment, in the military and criminal justice, we have all these obstacles. And yet we are very spirited people who will overcome these obstacles to get what we want. But at the same time, those obstacles don't disappear. You don't have, a total lack of poor whites because you have white achievement. There are poor whites in addition to having white people achieve. And so you have poor blacks and you have black people who are being run over by the pressure of oppression. At the same time, you have black achievement.
Let me talk a little bit about those obstacles when we return. We're going to take a quick break with Dr. Gloria Browne-Marshall, who is here with us in the studio, sharing a little bit about that New York Post article, that cartoon, should we say. Is it a fact or fiction in the minds of some? We'll continue that debate. We'll hear what you have to say as well when we return right here on Perspectives.